Shalom, Kahala Yahweh, Ba'Shem Yahushai, Ba'Shem Ruach Kodash. Double honors my teachers, the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Peace and mercy to the elect who are the house of David be born again in this generation. And Shalom to the 130 Yasharallah, who today are known as Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, who before losing our true heritage, we were known as and still are the true Hebrew Israelites of the Holy Bible. In today's lesson, we're going to talk about some of the issues going on with our current economy here in America, which biblically is known as Babylon the Great, and how it's soon going to get a lot worse and how that's biblical. But before we get into articles and talk about that, let's read about the prophecy and the vision which John the Revelator seen this coming upon the world, right? This was described as a black horse with a rider holding a pair of scales in his hands, as you see pictured here. Right? Well, let's go and read that, and it can be found in Revelation 6 and 5. And when he had opened the third seal, I heard the third beast say, "Come and see." And I beheld, and lo, a black horse, and he that sat on him had a pair of balances in his hands. And I heard a voice in the midst of the four beasts say, "A measure of wheat for a penny, and 3 measures of barley for a penny. And see that thou hurt not the oil and the wine." And there you go. That right there, that prophecy is talking about how there is going to come a big destruction, I guess you could call it, to the world economy, right? And we are on the precipice of a worldwide economic collapse, which is being done purposely by those in power, right? And those in power are who the Bible refers to as the kings of Edom, right? The Edomites, or who you would refer to today as the so-called Caucasian race, or what's more popularly referring to them as the one percenters, okay? The one percenters that sit upon the top of the world, they're for the most part all Caucasians, right? Or you could call them all Edomites, right? Because that's the biblical name of the Caucasian race. Now, let's go and break this down here a bit, right? When he tells you here that he's seen a black horse, remember there's 4 horses that is seen in the image, right? A red horse, pale horse, right? Both of those horses are basically representative of the nation of Edom, right? Who brings war, destruction, and death, and also, plagues upon the earth, right? The other horse is this black horse, right? That is going to bring a destruction to the economy, right? And then you have the white horse, which is ultimately a representation of our Messiah, who the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ, whose true Hebrew name is Yahushai, which is Hebrew for He is salvation. Okay. Well, right now in this black horse, we're living through it. Okay. Your money right now is basically losing its value at a record pace, right? And besides that, you have the Fed out there talking about that they don't know if they're going to be able to raise the debt ceiling, which means the U.S. government isn't going to have money to pay its bills, all that type of stuff. This happened a few years ago, but we're there again. Everything is starting to hit the fan, right? And one thing you could do to kind of keep up on the latest top headlines when it comes to the economy, there's this channel here called Epic Economist. Now, it's a bit alarmist, I guess you could say, but for the most part, they cover a lot of the important deals, right? And, from the Chinese economic collapse that's going on right now because of I think it's called the Evergrande Bank that got found out to basically be, a big fraud, I guess you could say. to basically the housing market, how it's imploding, to the shipping crisis, which is building up, and just the overall projection of silver and actual real money, right? It also covers things like the stock market, how it's inflated to a ridiculous bubble right now, man. It also has people like David Hunter, who is like a fairly famous economist, and you also got this guy here, Robert Kiyosaki, who's like that famous guy who wrote, I think it's called Chicken Soup for the investors, and like that, or Rich Dad Poor Dad. But again, ultimately a good channel if you want to get brushed up on what's going on with the economy. But for the most part, man, it is fucked up, right? And Esau's doing this on purpose, man. This all is coming to effect because Esau, the so-called Caucasians, are out there pushing this, right? And ultimately they're pushing this because the Lord is putting it on their spirit to go through with their agenda. And what is their agenda? Well, it's to collapse the world economies and bring forth the new world order digital currency, right? The central bank, the digital currency, so the CBDCs, right? Which pretty much all the countries are working on, which will eventually be tied into the mark of the beast, right? And everybody will basically pay, buy, and sell using these CBDCs, right? So central bank digital currencies. Okay, so but the big point right now that I'm going to cover in this lesson is inflation. Right now, what is inflation? Inflation is when the money that you have starts to lose its value, right? And what the problem with this is that you could save money all you'd like, right? You could have $1,000 under your bed, right? And you could be diligent, and you could forego buying that cheeseburger, forego going out with your friends, whatever, just so that way you could save that $1,000. But what's happening is, unbeknownst to you, the people in charge of the money system, the Federal Reserve, right, through the orders of the government, is basically printing out more money. And they don't even print money out anymore, man. All they do is basically change some numbers on a computer screen, and they put more money into circulation, or more credit, right? Things that they don't even have value on anymore. Because back in the 70s, President Nixon took America off the gold standard, right? And basically, after that, the dollar could no longer be redeemed for any precious metal, and for the most part, the U.S. dollar became fiat currency, right? Fiat basically means by the will of the king, right? Basically, what the king says goes, right? And when you study history, all fiat currencies have ultimately imploded and they failed. And why is that? Because the governments that have fiat currency will continue to use it up until it basically dies, right? And then what do? They just bring in a new currency that has some sort of intrinsic value in it. But ultimately, the U.S. dollar is losing its world reserve currency status, man. Other countries have already de-invested themselves from the dollar, right? I think Russia has fully removed itself from being invested in the dollar. China still holds a lot of the U.S. debt, right? But ultimately, the thing is that people are starting to use less dollars, period, right? And all the countries out there who have taken U.S. dollars, like the Arabians and everything, this is why you're seeing Arabs, Chinese, and all these foreign companies or people here in America buying up ports, businesses, highways, and everything. And why is that? Because they're trying to get rid of their U.S. dollars, which they have been paid in, and buy actual assets, because they understand that the U.S. dollar, it's inflating, right? The value is it's inflating, and basically it's becoming worthless, right? While you Jakes out there, you Negro, Latino, Native Americans out there, a lot of us don't even understand what this means, man. So what we do, we continue to store that $1,000. We continue to keep that money in a savings account, right? But the problem is that the amount that you save and the amount that you're getting a raise at your job is basically lower than the amount that inflation is raising up, which means you are working the same amount, if not harder, for less money, right? So that $1,000 you had under the bank in 2-3 years, or in this case a few months, you're not going to be able to buy $1,000 worth of goods. You'll only be able to buy $900 worth of goods or $800 worth of goods, right? And then when the system eventually collapses, that $1,000 is only going to buy you maybe $50, $100 worth of stuff, right? That's how inflation works. Now let's go and read this. It says, inflation is killing the recovery. This week, Ned Davis Research published a note titled, "Turns out growth looks like it was transitory. Inflation is more sticky." Right? Transitory means that it comes and it goes, right? Which these lying ass economists have been saying that the inflation is actually just transitory, right? That it's only going up just a bit while we're going through this COVID thing, right? But as they found, right, just like these devils always lie, things are always opposite to what they say. Turns out growth looks like it's transitory, which means growth of the economy is only temporary. Inflation is more sticky. There are many factors that show us that the consumers and salaries are being eaten away by inflation, leading to an abrupt halt in the recovery. Autos and new home sales plunged, real disposable personal income has plummeted, and real median wage growth is lower than inflation, right? Median means the average, right? So the average that somebody gets a raise is lower than what inflation is hitting, right? And this goes back to right here, man, where it tells you that, it says a measure of wheat for a penny and 3 measures of barley for a penny. This right here is showing you, man, that the prices are going to go astronomically crazy, right? That inflation is going to hit and the economy is going to be devastated, right? But check this out. When it says, "And see thou hurt not the oil and the wine," this right here is talking ultimately about this truth, right? The truth of the Bible, right? The scriptures and the abundance that the Israelites are gonna, or the 1/3 are gonna get, man, right? Wisdom and understanding. Now, back to the article. Policymakers, note that word, have pushed inflation at any cost with the most aggressive monetary policy in decades, right? And so check that out, man, right? What does that mean? Well, that means that the Fed has been doing some crazy things, man. So much so that they basically been, I think it's like $150 billion a month is what they're basically buying bonds with and stuff like that. So every month, the Federal Reserve buys up, billions of dollars worth of bonds that the U.S. puts up, right? Basically, it's like you're writing your own checks for the most part, right? That's what these devils have been doing. And it's getting to the point now where the inflation is getting out of control to the point where they can't hide it anymore, right? They can only make your candy bars so small before you start noticing it. They could only make the little, those little dimples on the bottom of your peanut butter jar so deep before you start noticing that you're paying the same amount but for less product, right? This is referred to as shrinkflation, right? Ultimately, it's inflation, but it's hidden inflation because these devils are trying everything they can to make you not notice that you're basically working for less money, right? Even though you're getting paid the exact same amount, right? Your money is just worthless. Continuing. And it took a normal recovery after the reopening to prove that inflation is always a monetary phenomenon. In 2020, G7 central banks increased money supply while above demand and faster than ever since 2009. This led to massive inflation spikes in essential goods and services. The rhetoric of transitory inflation and supply chain disruptions has been repeatedly debunked, right? Because you see these devils, they try to say that lumber went up like crazy because the sawmills and the transits, they weren't covering it. That's a bunch of bullshit, man. The economy is ultimately taking a nosedive, and Esau is simply just trying to cover it, right? When they said, yeah, all these prices are going up, right? The meat prices are going up, the cost for eggs and milk. They're trying to explain it away with, oh, these farms had a big problem, and this is why they had, this is why prices have gone up. Man, that's all a bunch of lies, right? Like it tells you here, the rhetoric of transitory inflation, right? Rhetoric, let's take a look at that word. Rhetoric. The art of effective and persuasive speaking or writing, especially the use of figures of speech and other compositional techniques. You see, and that's Esau's power, man. He has the gift of gab, right? He knows how to twist words so that way they don't seem as impactful or as alarming, right? That's his power, man. And this is what he does, man. This is where you get all these, crazy, $100 words out there that lull the society back to sleep, right? Because, this is their magic that they work. But let's continue. It says, we have seen 3 CPIs, consumer price indexes, print after the so-called base effect ended and prices continued to rise. Furthermore, the price of commodities where there is overcapacity has risen as fast as others. Inflation is always more money chasing scarce assets, and that is the reason why we see shipping and aluminum rise to all-time highs when there is ample capacity in the segment, even excessive capacity. Monetary history shows that policymakers always resort to the same excuses when it comes to printing money, and monetary mismanagement. First, say there is no inflation. Second, say it's transitory. And third, blame businesses. Fourth, blame consumers for overspending. And finally, present themselves as the solution for price controls, which ultimately devastate the economy. Right? So this ultimately is where we're at right here. Right? We're actually right here. Fourth, right? Pretty soon, what's going to happen, coming in Christmas, you're going to have a lot of people not buy shit, right? Just like the last couple of years, people aren't going to worry about Black Friday, and they're not going to worry about getting presents for Christmas. This is going to be a weak Christmas. And Kahala Yahweh should not shy for that, man, because ultimately, man, these devils need to really stop celebrating Christmas as it's a pagan holiday, right? Well, the point being is that these devils are going to use the scarce purchasing on Christmas and the day after Thanksgiving as an excuse to blame the consumer for overspending on gifts that they shouldn't have bought and stuff like that. And then they're going to say, oh, well, they didn't buy enough, and it was the season was less than expected. But you see, ultimately, they're going to blame you, and then they're going to come in with a solution, right? They're going to make sure prices don't go over a certain amount. And some companies are just not going to sell, or they're going to reduce the size of the packages they sell to stay within a certain criteria, which is going to devastate the economy. People are going to basically start selling on a black market. And this is where Esau is going to have to come in and start putting in some draconian type measures, man, to try to keep this economy afloat. And ultimately, the solution that he's going to bring forth is a new digital currency, a new digital dollar. And that's going to be ultimately tied to this implantable mark of the beast, right? And this is how they're going to get you, because everything else is going to be worthless, man. Continuing, and I'm just going to read the highlighted parts. In the United States, median wage growth has been more than offset by inflation, which means the raises people got on average was less than the amount that things increased in prices. And in Eurozone, wage growth plummeted in July, right? So it tells you your consumers see the prices of goods and services they buy every day rise significantly faster than the official CPI shows, and this in turn derails the economic recovery that was supposed to come from a less than likely consumption boom and services boost to above trend growth in 2021. None of the Keynesian miracles happened. You see, so these devils, they were saying that the economy was going to recover after we came out of the whole COVID lockdowns and all this stuff, and that people were going to get back to buying because they were tired of being quarantined and all this BS. And look at this, man. See, the Lord is now, smited Babylon the Great, which is America, with a wound that it cannot heal from, man. Its economies are, along with the rest of the economies of the world, are now suffering, right? And people like the policymakers and these Keynesian, economists, they're now trembling, right? Like it tells you here they would in Ecclesiastes 12:3. In the day when the keepers of the house shall tremble, right? That right there, the keepers of the house are these Wall Street bankers, the people who watch over the economy, all those people, right? And the strong man shall bow themselves, the grinders cease because they are few, and those that look out of the windows be darkened. And the doors shall be shut in the streets when the sound of the grinding is low. And he shall rise up at the voice of the bird, and all the daughters of music shall be brought low. Also when they shall be afraid of that which is high, and fears shall be in the way, and the almond tree shall flourish, and the grasshopper shall be a burden, and the desire shall fail, because man goeth to his long home, and the mourners go about the streets, or ever the silver cord be loosed, or the golden bowl be broken, or the pitcher be broken at the fountain, or the well broken at the cistern. Right? So ultimately, the whole point of this is that we're living in this time, man. This is when the Lord is bringing on destructions upon this place, Babylon the Great, man. We are being visited by that black horse, man. The economy is being devastated, man. So much so that people are opting out of this economy, man, because it tells you here, it says, now that the American dream is reserved for the wealthy, the smart crowd is opting out, right? People just don't want to work anymore, man. They don't want to work for these minimal wage jobs because they're bullshit for the most part, man. The money that they're making isn't worth it. Let's read it, this real quick. The already wealthy and their minions are unprepared for the smart crowd opting out, right? And when it says smart crowd, that basically means the people who are awoken to what's going on. Clueless economists are wringing their hands about the labor shortage without looking at the underlying causes, one of which is painfully obvious. The American economy now only works for the top 10%. The American dream of turning labor into capital is now reserved for the already wealthy, right? As a result, the smart crowd is opting out of the conventional workforce's overwork, dead-end treadmill, what clueless economists, pundits, and politicos are basically people who just speak about politics, right? News people, journalists, and so forth, don't dare acknowledge is that credentials and hard work are not a ticket to middle-class security. And that's because the middle class has been basically destroyed, right? And it's been destroyed because you cannot have an authoritarian, tyrannical system when you have a middle class, right? You basically only have the rich and the poor, right? And this is how you run a tyrannical system, okay? Middle class security. There's a ticket to impossible workloads demanded by global corporations and high-cost lifestyles anchored by student loan debt, high rents, and out-of-reach real estate, right? And this is ultimately has been done on purpose, man. These devils have burdened this new generation of Americans and ultimately the people around the westernized world, around the world, with basically high debt, from student loans to incredibly, high housing prices and everything, to basically cripple people, man, because people who are in debt will not riot. They're gonna be too busy trying to work it off and not make a fuss. Continuing. In other words, credentials, which means degrees and whatnot, and hard work are a dead end. Credentials and hard work are a dead end financially and health-wise, right? So people are starting to see that it's not worth going to college. It's not worth, working so hard to kill yourself and stress yourself out and die of a heart attack, right? The hope that there will be a safe haven when bubbles pop is another aspect of this time. It's different, and the belief has led many to drop out of the workforce to speculate their way to wealth. Given this is the greatest bubble of all time, this strategy has been gloriously successful, as the rising tide has raised all boats across virtually every asset class. So what this means is that people are finding ways to make money other ways, right? By doing Uber, DoorDash, like those type of stuff, like the gig economies, making money that way, or investing in like this whole GameStop, stock market, right? Or these penny stocks, which have been basically held on, which you can make a lot of money on and stuff, man. Like there's ways to make money in this system still. However, it's no longer by the traditional means, which was taught to us, which is if you work hard, you'll make money and you'll be able to raise your standard in this life, right? But that no longer is the case, right? As you can see here, right? You got the 1% who have made tons of money, along with if you look here at the rest of us, right? We have basically made less money than we did back in the late 80s, man, right? The economy has been shitty for us. And this ultimately, it shows you here, it says wealth of the top 400 wealthiest Americans, right? It just continues to grow, right? And the point being is that people are seeing that the economy is just jacked up, right? It's no longer that the money that we are working for no longer is worth it, man. Like the apostle said in last week's video, man. Before you go to a restaurant and get a good steak meal for like around $20-$30, now you're paying about $40-$50, man, maybe even $75 if you go to a really fancy place, right? And that's just because, again, the inflation, the money that you're having in your pocket, that you're spending, that you're working so hard for, is being devalued behind your back, man, right? This is Jeremiah 51:9. We would have healed Babylon, but she is not healed. Forsake her, and let us go, every one into his own country. For her judgment reacheth unto heaven, and is lifted up even to the skies. And this ultimately just shows that Babylon the Great will eventually reach a crescendo of its wickedness, right? So much so that its judgment is going to eventually have to come. And what is some of those judgments? One of those judgments is the scripture that I just read, man, that it's going to be visited by the black horse and the rider with the scales, right? And the devastation upon its economy are going to come not only upon Babylon the Great, but the entire world, because the entire world economy, for the most part, is Babylon's economy, right? This is why the world right now is being ran by these Edomites who control the dollar, right? Which is why the US dollar is the world reserve currency, okay? Now, that being said, let's read this. This is Matthew 24:37. But as the days of Noah were, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. For as in the days that were before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and given in marriage, until the day that Noah entered into the ark, and knew not until the flood came and took them all away. So shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. Then shall two be in the field, and one shall be taken, but the other left. And the point being here is that people now, just like in the days of Noah, were doing normal things. They were doing things that they thought were just normal everyday things, man. Right? And the point being is that, you see, right now we're literally living in the last minutes of the end times. Okay, we only have a few prophecies that need to come to pass before the end comes. Right? The Messiah, Yahushua, which is the true Hebrew name for the Messiah, right? Yahushua, right? Who the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ. He will soon be here, right? But before he comes here, the economy is going to have to implode. These devils are going to have to come out with their solution, which is going to eventually be this mark of the beast, which is going to be an implantable RFID chip, and ultimately the persecution of the prophets, right, and the elect, right, where some unfortunately are going to meet a horrible end, but in fact it's going to be that they're going to die in glory because they're going to be martyrs. Now, that being said, what should we do as Hebrew Israelites to prepare for this time, right? To prepare for the black horse coming upon the world? Well, we are not in darkness. We know what's going on. We're watching, so we are not caught off guard, right? Like the Lord said, blessed is the servant who is found watching when his master returns, right? And that's going to be you, right? So when the time comes that this economy finally collapses, it is going to be good if you are in a good place. And how do you get in a good place? You got to either buy tangible assets, and I'm talking about a property, right? A house, right? Get together with some friends, some family members that are in this truth, right? And buy a house if you can. If you can't, no problem. Get another tangible asset that you could hold on to, right? The apostles have talked about it many times. Buy silver, right? If you have a local coin dealer, go down there to the, We Buy Coins or We Buy Gold guys. A lot of times they have silver dollars that they're going to sell you for, right? Now, if you don't have a local coin dealer or whatever, and you just want to buy silver, which is what I recommend, it's what I do, this is what you do. You visit apmex.com, click on silver, and click on bestsellers, right? This is the cheapest you're going to basically buy silver for, right? Because this isn't, you ultimately have to pay a price for it, right? So let's see. So silver right now, if you look, silver is going for $22.84, right? It just raised up 9 cents, right? So 1 ounce of silver is $22.84, right? So what happens is that the reason why silver went up is not because silver became more valuable. It's because the US dollar has lowered itself, has gone down. Now, if you could buy gold, you should buy gold, right? But that a lot of us can't afford that. So again, you buy silver, right? So again, what you do, go to apmex.com, click on silver, click on bestsellers, and just buy this one, a 1 ounce silver round buffalo, right? This is 99.999% silver, okay? And what you want to do is you want to buy as many of these as you can afford, right? So every month, every week, whatever, buy what you can, right? Ideally, you want to buy a packet like this, right? And this, because they'll sell you about, I think, like 20 in here and stuff like that. And again, if you could buy 20, that's I don't know, let's just say $200 worth, right? But the point being is that when you buy them, the money that you spent, right, the $20, the $25 that you spent, because remember, you have to pay a price, to the person who's selling, right? They got to make a little bit of money off of it. You'll never buy it at spot price, right? But ultimately, this is the value that this silver coin will have, right? This 1 ounce of silver coin. And in the future, the whole idea is that the dollar is going to collapse and gold and silver is going to shoot up through the roof. They say that silver could go up to $1,500 or whatever. It's possible, but I'm guessing it'll probably be more like $100 or $150 per ounce, right? That's a good conservative estimate, right? So, but the point being is that it's a good way for you to store your purchasing power, okay? Because that dollars, if you keep your money in dollars, then you're not going to be able to save that money. Your $1,000 you have is going to get shrunken down through inflation down to maybe $200, right? Where if you were to buy $1,000 worth of silver, that silver, when the dollar collapses, is going to still be, let's say, 20 ounces of silver. But at that time, you could trade that 20 ounces of silver, which you bought for $1,000, you could probably sell it for now $20,000 or $50,000, right? Depending on how much of a fluctuation the economy hits. So again, the point being is that we got to prepare. Now, if you don't feel comfortable buying property, buying silver, buying gold, then no worries, right? The Lord didn't command us to do this. This is just a personal recommendation, right? And I'm just showing you how to do this, right? But if you don't want to buy this, then just stock up a bit more on food, on basic essentials that you already buy, right? Just so that way you have more of it for when you need it. So hopefully, Akim, this lesson was edifying. And I just want to give all praises and honor and glory to Yahweh, Bashem, Yahushai, Bashem, Ruach Kodash. Double honors to my teachers, the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Peace and mercy to the elect. Shalom.